So, Nick, we were talking disaster films this month. And,
yes.
Of course, we followed up last time with Poseidon Adventure. We're going to be talking Earthquake today.
Didn't really start it, but
it kind of exploded again, and exploded
Literally
maybe the right term for disaster movies. But interesting enough, Earthquake, which came out in November of 1974, was actually paired up with a film that came a month later, another disaster film, The Towering Inferno, were actually shown in a double feature at that point. And this is really inappropriate. The Shake and Bake double feature was what they called it. Shaking for Earthquake, baking for Towering Inferno. That's what it was referred to. And I got to assume that, that wouldn't have been done today, but it's an incredibly not okay way to refer to these two movies. But I guess that's the point, is we're having fun watching them happen. Yes. This is also unique in that it's Charlton Heston.
This is the first one with Charlton Heston, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
He kind of had gone off.
There's a lot of
Bible
firsts
epics
and All right, we're going to talk about Earthquake, one of the staples of disaster movies. I'm going to talk about a little bit of the tropes. They have some of the tropes, so what's a little bit different about, unique about the whole genre, if you want to call it a genre. So this is, of course, when you're in LA and you make movies and you're sitting in a fault line, what are you going to make a movie about when you do disasters? You're going to make
Fault Line Cinema, Earthquake, Kyle and Nick on Film, we're here. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoetheFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from St. Paul Filmcast and director Mark Robson, right? Robson. Actually was on a crew during Citizen Kane, Magnificent Amberson, so he knew technical terms of, the technicality of making film by Orson Welles. In fact, and then latched on to Val Lewton, who did a lot of B-noirs. In fact, I think, if you remember right, he did one of my favorites, which is Cat People. Oh, he edited Cat People. Yeah, he edited Cat People. So Mark Robson was, we call him production assistant on film. They just do all the other stuff. But you learn from that and become editing film before he became a film director. Mm-hmm. He also did, I think he did another noir. It's kind of a favorite of mine, and not really top 10, but Champion with Kirk Douglas.
Okay.
Because boxing's always the noir sport, boxing. Yeah. So here we are, and he gets to do, I think this is with his last film. I'm not sure if it's the complete last, his very last, but it's one of his last films he ever got to direct.
Fair enough. Well, and the kind of the story of where Earthquake came from, for those of you that don't know the movie, it's about an earthquake that hits LA. It's a bunch of random stories, as all disaster movies are, about people interacting with the earthquake. But the idea of it was actually, it kind of came about in 1970, several years before the film had actually released, and it wasn't until the Poseidon Adventure became a hit that they were like, we got to get this going. And then there was also a race because they wanted to get it out before the Towering Inferno.
Sure.
Because it was kind of that was the follow-up film to Poseidon Adventure in a lot of ways. So it was like, we really got to get this going. Mario Puzo had written a script for it before The Godfather became such a hit. They knew that it was going to be a hit, but Mario Puzo had written a script for them, and they wanted to pull him in to help finish it. But he had just been signed to The Godfather Part 2.
Exclusively, I think.
Yeah,
and so he couldn't work on anything else.
I think it was kind of a thing where he could get pulled away at any moment, and they were like, okay, we got to kind of finagle something else together. So they put this movie together as quickly as they could. It's a little bit noticeable for that reason, because for all of its, I don't want to say, the movie has a lot of great special effects, but not more than a couple of faults.
We talk about there's not really a lot of smoothness to this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But there's really some good editing choices. Dorothy Spencer, who's a very accomplished film editor, and she's probably top of her game here. I think you get nominated for Best Editing?
So it was nominated for Best Editing, Best Set Decoration, Best Cinematography. It won for Best Sound, and it also got a Special Achievement Award, which was kind of what they gave to visual effects before there was a visual effects.
So she does really careful, good editing. There are spots where where they're crashing, and you can see that it's authentic cars. But then you can tell that it's a model set, but she slices it perfect, that it doesn't really take away. You kind of might know, that's the toy set. But she cuts it very carefully where, okay, we're going to move on. And not even the kids falling and everything. So she carefully crafts all these disasters well to make it real authentically. Where if somebody does amateur, it would look like a mess.
Yeah, well, I think the actual action scenes of the movie are pretty strong. And we kind of laugh at, of course, they're obviously that way, but I think if you kind of lose yourself in the movie, you can experience it. It was the same thing with Poseidon Adventure too, where it's like if you really wanted to fine tune and fight it, you could probably.
If you want to find faults in there,
but I think this is one where like the action scenes are pretty strong overall. Yeah. The biggest problem with that is that it takes an hour for us to get to the scenes, which, compared to Poseidon Adventure, the flip happens 30 minutes in. We're going to talk about the Towering Inferno next week, which kind of had some quicker, time to get to the action. Right. Is we have an hour to get there, and I don't know if I like any of the characters enough to care about them for an entire hour before stuff starts happening. That's the big difference in this film from other ones. I didn't like any of these characters.
Like if anybody goes away, you're like, oh, that's sad, but you're not going to. You're going to just move on.
Yeah. So, I mean, Charlton Heston's character is married to. His steward is married to Ava Gardner's character, and they're in a kind of a loveless marriage. She assumes he's having an affair, and you know what you do when people assume you're having an affair?
Go ahead and do it.
Go have an affair. Why not? And then we get George Kennedy.
Played a cop
before Naked Gun. Yeah. And he plays a cop that is basically, he's kind of doing the right thing, but he's also kind of a dirtbag. Like he's just kind of this jerk that's going around.
George Kennedy was also in all the airplane disaster movies. So
there you go. Yeah. So we'll probably be talking
about one. If you want to do that,
George
Kennedy's going to be in it. Yeah.
But then, I guess I liked Richard Roundtree's Miles Quaid.
Yeah.
Quaid.
Shaft.
He was pretty cool to see, and I'm a big fan of Richard Roundtree and like his big roles and even his small stuff too. Like he's consistently been working. He was on the show Heroes. He was in Speed Racer, which is like my favorite underrated movie. So I think
he's a Shaft man.
He's kind of all around in there too. But then who's the other guy too? I'm blanking on it, but the guy that was in Marjo, who played he worked at the food place, and then he went to become a National Guards guy. Like his storyline is terrible.
That doesn't make any sense.
It comes out of nowhere. It's jarring, and it just kind of frustrates you.
Yeah, they take out the whole grocery store and him being in the military, and then what transpired after that.
Yeah, and an interesting thing about this is when this film aired on television, sometime after it was released, they needed it to be longer because they were going to air it in two halves. There wasn't enough time to air it at night. The 2 hour and 5 minute.
That's hilarious.
So they added 40 more minutes to this movie. They didn't add it with deleted scenes. There was plenty of deleted scenes. They shot 40 minutes more movie with new characters and expanded like their least likable characters into like 161 minutes to air it over 2 nights, which is it's jarringly odd that even would happen.
Right. I would say no, but
yeah. So when it comes down
sometimes TV gets its way.
Yeah, but the weird thing for me is like the only character I was really interested in seeing what happened to him, maybe outside of Richard Roundtree's, was Walter Matthau. He's just there.
I know that.
And it was a cameo appearance. If you look at the credits, he's credited as Walter Matuszewski or something like that.
It's really ridiculous. But I told Kyle before you see it, he goes, I Walter, you can talk about, we're going to see Earthquake, and the first thing that comes to mind is Walter Matthau at the bar with his loud outfit.
I just wanted to keep watching that scene. Should have been like one of those like home defense movies after that where Walter Matthau's got the shotgun out. He's just like...
But yeah, this is, I don't think you're ever going to see her very much anymore. Guinevere Bujold, she's from France. This is one of her first movies, and it's a big movie, and she plays the mistress to Charlton Heston. You got classic Ava Gardner. You have Lauren Green from TV.
Lauren Green playing Ava Gardner's dad when they're like 10 years apart. Like
I know, it doesn't work. Right, it doesn't work. And you got a lot of the kid. Of course, you get one kid in it. That's good. You get the turmoil. So yeah, it has the tropes of all, a huge assembled cast of new and old. You have the tropes of subplots of relationships not going very well and how they intersect. I do like the car chase scene going through, you watch Charlton Heston stop at a stoplight in his truck and then the car chase scene, and then we're going with the car chase. It moves
from character to character is really neat, and the way that they intersect, because again, like when you have the Poseidon Adventure, it's a group. Like you can't really have them intersecting with another group.
No, it's
like have it be a major thing. This is one where I think, the character interactions do bleed through pretty nicely, and they mix and match characters that move around. That's what makes it more interesting for me. I just wish I liked any of these people enough to really follow them. Because, I guess Genevieve was good, but then again, she's also a homewrecker. There's that kind of like persistent element of like, I want to see what happens, but I don't like them. Producing people said after this movie came out that it was kind of it's a tough thing to make an Earthquake movie. Because really, earthquakes last 3 minutes. What are you going to do with the other 117 minutes? Really, unless you have aftershocks, unless you have more like mystery abound in the film, which is kind of what they cling to with like the looting scene and everything like that.
You got the mayor of the city, which is from your favorite movie, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Yeah. So I was just gonna bring
always that. John Randolph.
His friend Jack Daniel. But yeah, then so if you don't have really good, interesting characters, what you have is amplify the special effects, and you got to get them through obstacles to overcome, which is like getting the dam open or climbing, getting everybody out of the tower. You know, the building structures. So you have to investigate a lot of time doing that, as well as the ground level of George Kennedy. You know, he didn't want to be a cop anymore, but now he knows that he can be a good cop. So yeah,
he's the best cop there because most of them don't make it. So
yeah, right, yeah. So it's almost like a force, but yeah, you're not doing. I would say the characters in Poseidon Adventure are far more interesting than any of these. But I like the special effects in this one.
Special effects are great in this one. There's only one scene where the effects don't work, and I think you probably know which scene this is. When the elevator drops. Yeah. And you get the animated blood scene, which apparently has become notorious in film, is that they tried this blood effect multiple times when they dropped the elevator and they couldn't get it to work, so they just decided we're just going to cartoon blood over the movie. Yeah. In a decision that feels so out of left field that it's been removed from most of the television versions of the film. And in some DVD versions, they've removed the blood scene.
Version you had it?
The version I had it. Yeah. It's just notoriously noticeable. I wouldn't even have noticed a lack of blood in that scene when the elevator drops if they hadn't done it. It's almost like a choice that makes it worse. But I think everything else, like the action set pieces, and even like the actual
the house
is cool. The house is falling was a great scene. You kind of know what's coming, but like it's that setup and that play
out the window. Yeah. A lot of windows breaking. I love how the makeup put like insert glass in everybody. All of a sudden, let's just do that for about 5 minutes.
Oh, that's the weird thing too. Is the earthquake itself felt mean-spirited at times, where it's just like you're just picking on people now, and maybe that's kind of the point. The other thing that I had as far as like the writing goes is these character interactions, not all of them make 100% sense when you look at them through the lens of people who live in an earthquake-like zone. You know, you live in a place where earthquakes are going to happen.
Surprised.
And some of them are surprised. Some of them make really dull and dumb choices where they're like, you know, this is dangerous. What should I do? I'll go do it. Like, and kind of like, it's encapsulated with this kind of like dumb sensibility of the bridge. The bridge scene at the beginning of the film where the guy raises the elevator and the guy falls out and he's covered in water and he's basically, how do you drown in an elevator? Yeah. And they spend like 45 minutes to an hour trying to figure out how this guy drowned in an elevator, and then one guy comes up and he's like, well, there's water down there. It's like, well, we know that. You know, it's some of that kind of stuff as far as the writing where it's like, what? But thankfully the back half of the film is so much stronger.
Yeah. I love I've seen this lots of times, and I remember it used to be on TV, but I still get a kick that it's Clint Eastwood shooting a gun in a movie that starts the earthquake.
Oh,
it's such a loud bang! Yeah. And all of a sudden the earthquake starts.
Well, and speaking of how
they go see a Clint Eastwood movie, and all of a sudden it's a
Earthquake is kind of like a rarity in the film world, too, because when it was initially released, it came out with something called Sensurround, which I did some research into. Only like 5 or 6 movies had this, and it was basically like you installed subwoofers in the theater that during the earthquake scenes would drive like 120 decibels of sound, like at real low grades, so that you didn't hear it as much, but just kind of like all the seats would rattle.
Yeah.
And the thing about it, the only reason this only happened in like 5 movies was because a number of horrible like things came out of this, that people were reportedly ill in the theater, that theaters were uninstalling them after like shrapnel would come down from the ceilings. Like some of them, I think Nan's Chinese Theater actually put like a net up to try. You can see a picture of this where they were like catching plaster that would fall. And there was even a case, I think, I might be wrong about this, in Chicago, where a like fine china store next door to the theater was having things falling off the shelves because of the sound quality that was going through. So Sensurround is not a thing anymore. Although if you do watch the movie, I have a surround sound system in my home. If you do watch the movie at home, they do actually do a pretty solid job of giving that Sensurround a little bit more work in the home, and it is more successful there, but it just did not work in theaters.
So, like we said, it was more of an experience coming out in theaters than when now you watch it, and I was born in the 70s, it's more of a nostalgia, like, oh, remember the cars back then, remember the outfits we wore and all that stuff. So it definitely transitioned to that, but you still get to appreciate the technical event. I mean, this was outside of like what Superman 2 did. This is a far technical achievement.
Oh yeah, and I think that's kind of the funny thing about the Academy giving out a special achievement awards. They did this frequently with these disaster movies because they just didn't want to create a visual effects branch, and which makes sense. There wasn't a lot of visual effects movies that would have.
No, there's a lot more practical stuff. I know they did 3 matting for something like the ending where there's 3 different movies and you put them all together. Yeah,
but that was the case of like, you know, they had to say something about this incredible effects work that was being done. Even in a film where you kind of struggle with characters like that the event itself is so big, and it's funny that when they advertise it in trailers, it was just the earthquake is coming, like, and it felt like it was going to be this huge moment, and you're waiting for it, you're hoping it's on the way.
So it definitely is not, you know, like Poseidon Adventure enhanced the genre. I think Earthquake really. Now everybody's going to recognize it. All right, everybody wants to do this. Everybody wants it. It did make money.
Oh yeah,
people went to see them.
Mm-hmm. So and they wanted it to be a repeat viewing event film, which is, I think, successful in that way. It's also got a lot of history with it. It's this unique kind of strange movie amidst the disaster films. That it's not as entirely successful from a character piece, but the effects are so strong that it makes watching it. Yeah. You know, it's there's a number of films that do this nowadays where the effects are great, but like they don't always neg the characters. You know, we get that with like recent MonsterVerse movies, like the Godzilla movies. People always criticize like the characters, but they're like, man, when those monsters show up,
and they don't show enough of them. Right?
Yeah. So it's kind of that interesting piece in that I don't think it's as successful as other disaster movies that we've talked about or will talk about. But I did enjoy the movie.
It amplified it. That's what I'm looking for the word, but it amplified the genre and solidified it.
Yeah. And especially being released in the Shake and Bake double feature, which is just wild. So I enjoyed the movie. I would recommend it. It's a slight recommendation because I do really criticize that hour is not a great first hour at the beginning of the movie. I also really don't like what they did with the Heston character in the final moments. It felt like he was given a choice that really was kind of it's just a frustrating choice that I don't feel did anything for any of the characters involved.
No.
At the finale, the actual earthquake scene is great, and a lot of the like interesting stories that come up with George Kennedy, with Richard Roundtree, some really interesting like character pieces. Yeah. Hashtag bring back Walter Matthau for a sequel.
So, like I said, I like the technical stuff of it. Yeah, the storylines are not going to work very well. Mm-hmm. It's going to drag out. Like, let's sit and watch Earthquake. You have to have a little bit of patience for the beginning of the movie. You have to take time with the wide tracking shots of everything. But I don't like the ending.
You don't like the ending, like the last choice that we were talking
about? Last choice and how they end it. It's just, for all the stuff that happened, and then it's going to go at the end.
It felt abrupt. Like, I had a moment where I was like, did I miss something? Like, I rewound and watched the last 10 minutes because I was like, maybe I was looking away from the TV for a second, but I felt like I missed a big plot point. And that ending,
it's just nothing.
It was rewritten.
Oh.
Right? Real quick, if you haven't seen the film, pause now. I am going to discuss a few moments in the ending that you may not want to hear. So pause now, go watch the movie, come back to us. There you go. The ending where Charlton Heston has the choice of, am I going to go after my wife who is very likely going to die, or am I going to leave? I don't understand. Like, maybe I sound awful, but you've already cheated on your wife. The marriage is already crumbling and she's going to die. I don't really see why this is a choice that we need to watch him make.
Right. And then
it doesn't make
after that, then you have this, let's just pan out and that's it. Like, we just look at the disaster where we have, like, maybe you want to go, if you really want to see them really be good people, you start scavenging and looking for other rescues. And rather than just sitting down in shock, want to look around, let's go to the next house. Or something like that would fit very much.
Yeah. And the whole thing with George Kennedy being talking about like how this used to be such a great town kind of a thing, that was supposed to be a Heston thing. He didn't like the way his character basically turned into a scumbag. I don't like the way his character turned into a scumbag. So
no, I don't either.
So that was kind of rewritten to do it where Kennedy was involved in that last interaction. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, it just kind of ends and they're like, oh, it's done. Yeah. I would have liked to have seen more of what they were doing after the first Quake as part of the finale. And again, that's kind of the tough thing about it when you make a movie about an earthquake, because it's only a 3-minute piece of action, really, in most cases. So you have to do something like maybe have a fire start somewhere because of the earthquake, and then they have to save someone that way, and like make it really like feel like more than it is, because the the thing where they're going after the people in the hospital. It's an important scene, but it really doesn't feel like an end scene.
No. Yeah, you got to work on the ending. I always appreciate a good ending.
Yep.
So overall, I think it's you got to appreciate. You got to recognize the disaster movies, and we talked disaster movies. It's going to be in there. I mean, it amplified it, it solidified it.
Yeah, it feels more like it's a disaster movie than any other disaster movie. I don't know. I don't know why. It just feels like the most.
When people say when it's a bad like a disaster, like it's a really disaster, they point to this one.
So we both enjoyed the film. We do recommend it with some faults. It's definitely a worthwhile viewing experience. We want to know your thoughts as well. So go ahead and comment down below. What are your thoughts on the 1974 film Earthquake? Why have they not made a whole lot of other earthquake movies?
Well, would you consider like 97 Volcano like kind of the same thing?
It's kind of, I mean, it's similar in a way, where like most, because again, why is there a volcano there? But, they've done a lot of TV ones, like 10.5 on the Sci-Fi Channel. And like there's like 4 films called Aftershock that came out on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Right, I think if you just Google it, there are some B-movie versions of it.
Yeah, we haven't really had anything outside of San Andreas. The most recent The Rock movie came out. Other than that, there haven't been a whole lot of earthquake movies. Why is that? Let us know in the comment section down below. Also, you guys can like this video, and that way it really helps us out. And you can also subscribe, and that helps you out, because then you won't have to go searching for our new content whenever it drops. Another way that you can also always be involved is join the Patreon. Patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm. The link's down in the description below. You guys can join for as low as $1 a month and help get inside the conversation more.
We're starting putting more content on there. I know it's a little bit new, but we're starting building that up.
Yep. So, yeah, it's exciting to be able to kind of like bring the show to you and then kind of have like after information kind of stuff that we can talk about on the Patreon and get involved in the conversation more, which is what really the goal is. Yeah. So thank you guys for joining us. You can find all my film reviews on goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find the St. Paul Filmcast anywhere you find podcasts where I interview local filmmakers from the Twin Cities area.
Nick, do you feel that?